The UN Agency for Children has called on Israel to release imprisoned Palestinian children. In a statement, UNICEF warned that children in detention face a heightened risk of contracting COVID-19. The statement said at the end of March, Israeli authorities had 194 Palestinian minors in prisons. It said the rights of children to protection, safety, and well-being must be upheld at all times. UN agencies officials said the children are denied in-person access to their families and their lawyers.
Israel's putting into practice its plan to return to normality, with schools and kindergartens beginning to open their doors. But concerns have been raised after the country's Prime Minister proposed a controversial measure to track children's social distancing by microchipping them.
I spoke with our heads of technology in order to find measures Israel is good at, such as sensors. For instance, every person, every kid, I want it on kids first, would have a sensor that would sound an alarm when you get too close, like the ones on cars.
Well, the Prime Minister's proposal received a barrage of criticism, especially from cybersecurity experts. Many of them questioned the legality of chipping people. The head of cyber studies at Tel Aviv Academic College, Tal Pavel, believes that it will allow criminals, including kidnappers and paedophiles, to track children.
This initiative, it might be kind of roadmap to disaster. It can harm kids from a wide range of aspects. Since the information of the physical presence, the geolocation of the kids will be on the net, it won't be to be able to hack and to breach those kind of geolocation. It can be cyber criminals or criminal to kidnap those kids. It can be pedophiles. It can be also terrorists. Because if I know a target, I can track his children, I can harm his children. The consequences may be, as far as I see it, very dangerous.
Well, the government countered that criticism, claiming that no information will be kept on databases and the technology is just designed to keep kids at a safe distance from each other. It claimed no privacy laws would be violated and the chips would be optional. But Tal Pavel again believes that it could quickly become mandatory.
It may be voluntary today and it may be mandatory tomorrow. So once again, when you open the door and someone enters the door and suggests that it will be voluntary today, it may be mandatory tomorrow, and the consequences may be harmful. We see so many cases of leaked databases. At the end of the day, a lot of data that are gathered find the way out. It's invasion to our privacy, it's invasion to our, perhaps, I don't know, body. The problem is that we live in an era, in a digital era, in which our borders of privacy, of anonymity, of online freedom is getting narrower day by day.
It is no secret that Israel and the US cooperate on several security questions, including the fight against COVID-19. I-24 News was allowed to attend a video conference briefing between an Israeli police officer and the NYPD representative in Israel. For the first time, he has agreed to be filmed.
The latest is that police units are still mobilized in the different areas. In the north, specifically for that festival, so we have 2,500 units altogether that are around the different areas. They're going to make sure that there won't be any public. Came very much under control very quickly. So I think, it's step by step. We're taking things slowly but surely as the different areas are opening up again.
Crime is still ongoing, so we're busy. Our officers are answering radio runs. Our officers are properly equipped with COVID-19 equipment.
According to the Israeli police spokesman, these briefings between security agencies take place weekly. Currently, they focus on the pandemic management by the Israeli police officers. The American representative is pleased with the cooperation.
We do see how the Israeli National Police is dealing with the current situation in Israel, and we are learning from it. We're trying to understand what works for the Israeli National Police.
Unlike the situation in Israel, in New York City, coronavirus did not spare the police forces.
Have you lost lost any police officers to COVID.
We've had more than 400 officers that were in isolation for different periods, either those who have been in connection with someone who was infected. So what's the situation with you guys? I mean, how many officers have been affected?
Unfortunately, the NYPD lost 41 members to COVID-19. Six uniform members of the service and 35 civilian members of the service.
The pandemic did not spare the local Jewish community either.
The Jewish community in the city of New York has been affected with this COVID-19 as much as the rest of the communities in the city. COVID-19 does not distinguish between different communities.
The security cooperation will also be on the agenda of visiting American Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who meets with Israeli leaders on Wednesday.
If Israel goes ahead with its intention to annex parts of the West Bank, it will have to pay a price. That's reportedly the message from European nations meeting this Friday to discuss punitive actions in an attempt to deter the new Israeli government from actually going through with its plans.
I cannot believe that such a step would go completely without reaction in the European Union. I think there is a very strong feeling there that this is a benchmark for the future, any future negotiation between Israel and the Palestinians.
The EU bloc is Israel's largest trading partner. It funds Israeli research, gives Israel favorable trading moves, and there's ample collaboration between the two in science, culture, and business. But it won't be easy to come to a consensus, which is necessary in EU foreign policy decisions, since the individual countries have different relations with Israel and with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
I think it's a stress factor for the relations. I think Israel has much to lose. But there is a question of how far the European Union will want to go in terms of practical sanctions.
But with a likely nod from U.S. President Donald Trump, Netanyahu can carry out the move. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Israel this week, and the annexation is expected to be discussed. Relations between Israel and the U.S. have warmed under the Trump administration.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has functioned most of the time during his very long tenure now under a very simple rule. If I have the United States, I don't really care about all the others.
Depending on the details of the plan, the European Union will, despite its strong relationship with Israel, push back on any announcement on the annexation. The question is by how much, and how much does Israel care?
Another deadly incident in the West Bank. 15 years old Zayed El-Qaisia was shot dead during violent clashes between the Israeli military and local residents of the El-Fawar refugee camp near Hebron. Hundreds arrived at the funeral. His family is mourning, and the masses are raging.
The occupation doesn't need an excuse to raid the Palestinian areas, camps, villages, and cities. The language of the occupation is always blood, killings, and displacement.
This comes one day after the killing of an Israeli soldier during a military operation in the West Bank. The two incidents mark a rise in tension after a relatively calm period. Violent spikes of this kind happen occasionally and usually calm down after a short while. But this time could be different. The calm in the West Bank relies on two main elements: the coordination between Israeli and Palestinian security forces and a stable, functioning Palestinian economy. But the reality is changing. Palestinian security forces claim that if Israel follows through with the plan to annex parts of the West Bank, they will no longer take part in counter-terrorism efforts. And after almost 3 months of coronavirus lockdown, the Palestinian economy is in free fall, and many can no longer provide for their families. Growing poverty, combined with a general feeling that diplomatic efforts cannot prevent an Israeli annexation of the Jordan Valley, could create a fertile ground for violence. Another Palestinian uprising in the West Bank doesn't seem likely anytime soon, but the air smells of fuel, and one casualty on either side could eventually ignite it.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem this morning, during which they discussed a series of strategic issues, including efforts to curb Iran's malign activities. Russian ambassador to the United Nations, Vasily Nebenzia, announced that Moscow will veto any attempts by Washington to extend an arms embargo on Tehran. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres calls upon the Lebanese government to ensure the disarmament of the Iranian proxy Hezbollah. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo arrived in Israel early this morning for a short 6-hour visit that focused on a series of bilateral, regional, and global challenges. Upon arrival at the country's Ben Gurion International Airport, the top American diplomat immediately traveled to Jerusalem, where he held his first meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Prior to the meeting, Pompeo and Netanyahu held a short press briefing, during which the latter emphasized Jerusalem's deep appreciation for the strong alliance between the two countries.
We so deeply appreciate the fact that this is your first trip abroad in some time, that you're making it to Israel for 6 hours. I think this is a testament to the strength of our alliance, to the strength of President Trump's commitment to the State of Israel, and to the strength of your commitment to the State of Israel in our alliance as well. So I want to thank you for that too.
Netanyahu further mentioned the historic significance of tomorrow's date, May the 14th, in addition to the deep partnership that bonds the two peoples, coupled with Pompeo's trip to the Jewish state, which is a powerful expression of the deep-rooted Israeli-American alliance.
Tomorrow marks 72 years from the recognition of President Truman of the State of Israel, the young State of Israel, and it also marks 2 years from another historic decision, the recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital by President Trump. I think that this brackets the tremendous partnership that we have, the friendship that we have, the great sympathies that the people of Israel and the people of America have with one another. Your trip at this time is a powerful expression of that.
The Israeli leader went on to list the topics that were to be discussed with the top American diplomat behind closed doors, including the joint U.S.-Israel efforts to combat the spread and devastating implications of the corona contagion, Republic of Iran.
We have a lot to talk about. The first thing is the plague. The corona plague is something that challenges the entire world, our two countries and everyone else. And we'd like to talk about strengthening our cooperation, our partnerships in battling the coronavirus plague.
Prime Minister Netanyahu also noted the anticipated establishment of the long-overdue Israeli National Unity Government, the swearing-in of which was postponed to tomorrow in order to accommodate the visit of U.S. Secretary of State Pompeo.
Now we're about to form a national unity government tomorrow. I think that this is an opportunity to promote peace and security based on the understandings that I reached with President Trump in my last visit in Washington in January.
Secretary Pompeo, for his part, underscored his deep faith-based appreciation of Jerusalem, while further highlighting Israeli technology and medical expertise, which in cooperation with the United States will most definitely deliver good outcomes that will decrease risks for the world in all that pertains to the global corona pandemic.
We'll have this great opportunity to chat about lots of topics. I always love coming here as a person of faith. It's fantastic. When I came down the road today, I got a chance to see some of the walls of the old city. It always reminds me of the historic nature of this place and this very special city that we're in today. We'll certainly talk about the challenges the globe faces with COVID, Israeli technology, Israeli medical expertise, all of the things that you and I and our teams can work on together. I know we'll deliver good outcomes and decrease risk for people all across the world from this global pandemic. Yes. Second, we'll get a chance to talk about the vision for peace. We're now some months on from the day that you came to Washington when President Trump announced that vision for peace when you were there. There remains work yet to do, and we need to make progress on that. I'm looking forward to it.
With regard to the American-led efforts to contain the Islamic Republic's malign activities across the Middle East, Secretary Pompeo emphasized the need to continue with the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign Turning to the United Nations headquarters in New York, where Russia's ambassador to the United Nations, Vasily Nebenzia, announced that Moscow will veto any attempts by the United States to extend an arms embargo on the Islamic Republic of Iran, nor will it allow the world body to reimpose international sanctions on the Ayatollah regime. In a video news conference, the Russian diplomat clarified his country's intention after Moscow had made its desire public on several occasions to resume conventional arms sales to Tehran once the UN-imposed sanctions expire in October later this year. In other yet related news, the United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called upon the Beirut government to ensure the disarmament of the Lebanese Iranian proxy Hezbollah. In a statement written by Guterres, he wrote, quote, "I continue to urge the government and the armed forces of Lebanon to take all measures necessary to prohibit Hezbollah and other armed groups from acquiring weapons and building paramilitary capacity outside the authority of the state." Separately, the UN Security Council was briefed by its envoy for Lebanon. It also urged Israel to stop making use of Lebanese airspace for its strikes against Iranian targets in Syria.
The members of the Security Council commended the key and continued efforts of UNIFIL to maintain calm along the Blue Line. Its cooperation with the Lebanese armed forces with the aim of extending the control of the government of Lebanon over all Lebanese territory, and stressed the importance of UNIFIL being able to fulfill its mandate. The members of the Security Council expressed their deep concern following the recent incidents which occurred across the Blue Line and in the United Nations interim force in Lebanon's UNIFIL area of operations, as well as all the violations of United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701, including by land and air. They recalled that all parties should make every effort to ensure that the cessation of hostilities is sustained, exercise maximum calm and restraint, and refrain from any action or rhetoric that could jeopardize the cessation of hostilities or destabilize the region.